So, good morning class. By the way, I am Narain A. Orong, and our topic for this morning is all about the Earth, the spheres, structures, and interaction. So last time, Sir Aljan discussed the first two spheres, which is the geosphere and the hydrosphere. So again, ang geosphere includes all the rocks and minerals found on Earth, while the hydrosphere is all the water found on, under, and over the surface of the Earth. So now we will continue the discussion, and let's talk about the atmosphere and the biosphere. So atmosphere, so unsa man ang atmosphere? So the atmosphere, this is a very huge envelope of air nga nag-surround sa atong Earth and pulled by the gravitational force of the Earth, of this Earth atmosphere. So unsa man ang mga gases nga naa sa atmospheres? Of course, na oxygen and carbon dioxide and others. So the atmosphere is primarily composed of 78% of nitrogen, 21% of oxygen, and 1% of other gases like argon, carbon monoxide, hydrogen, ozone, and helium. So, ang atmosphere mo na siya nag-provide of oxygen sa ato, enable for us to breathe, and also it protects the Earth inhabitants from harmful UV rays nga gikan sa sun, and helps to keep the planet at a temperature suitable for life, since it helps keep the Earth warm enough for living things to survive. So the atmosphere causes space debris to burn up before reaching Earth's surface and causing harm. So basically, it is a defense barrier mechanism that protects us from the harmful visitors outside. So the atmosphere is reaches over 350 miles up from the surface of the Earth. So it is made up of different layers. We have here the troposphere, stratosphere, and mesosphere, thermosphere, and exosphere. So the troposphere, it is the lowest layer of the troposphere, of the atmosphere, sorry. So from the word tropo, meaning change. So this is the part of the atmosphere on where there is a weather and there are changes in the atmosphere itself. So there is a troposphere, there is nga area ta na belong in which we humans live in. And also, diri pod mag-occur ang mga weather phenomena like rain, snow, and thunderstorms. So next, so above the troposphere is we have the stratosphere. So ang stratosphere, from the word strato, means layer or level. So there is a stratosphere nato makita ang ozone layer. So ang ozone layer mo na siya ang nag-protects or nag-shields us from the sun's ultraviolet rays radiation nga gikan sa sun. Above the stratosphere is we have the mesosphere. So the mesosphere is this is the coldest layer of the atmosphere, and where meteorites breaks apart here. So this is where the diffuse atmospheric compounds are found. So the next layer is the thermosphere. So thermosphere is it is 5 times as deep as the layer combined, and it is very hot layer and holds up to 2000 degrees Celsius, because as you go far away from the ground, the atmosphere becomes thinner. So lastly, we have the exosphere. So from the word exo, meaning outside. So dire nga layer nato makita ang satellites nga nag-surround sa atong Earth. So just like the geosphere and hydrosphere, the atmosphere serve as also as a barrier. Serve as a barrier that contains the Earth from outside visitors. It acts like a shield that disintegrate every object that is coming inside of the planet Earth. And one thing is that it contains the gases that living things needs for survival. Like for example, carbon dioxide for photosynthesis and oxygen for aerobic respiration, and it also transfers heat that is coming from the sun. And also the ozone in the stratosphere protects the living things, in the living things exerts ultraviolet radiation, and it plays a part in weathering and erosion. So the last sphere is what we call the biosphere. So from the word bio, meaning life. So this is where all form of life exists. So we humans, we are part of the biosphere. So all the living things on earth are part of the biosphere. So since life exists, so since ang life kay mag-exist man sa air and also sa water and sa ground, so it boundaries overlap the spheres because life can be found everywhere. So the biosphere is sometimes thought as a one large ecosystem. So a complex community of living and non-living things functioning as a single unit. So it includes all organisms on Earth as well as the environment in which they live. So most organisms live within a few meters of Earth's surface, but some exist deep beneath the ocean surface. So and others live high atop Earth's mountains. So all of the Earth's life forms requires interaction with at least one of the other systems for their survival. So because of this biosphere, the biosphere is structured into the hierarchy known as a food chain, so in which energy and nutrients like carbon are transferred from one level of the food to the next. So here in the biosphere, it aids, there are some important rules of the biosphere. Of course, it aids in the weathering, like for example, formation of acids in the soil, and also an important sink for certain elements, especially carbon, and mediates the formation of some minerals. And lastly, photosynthesis maintains the oxygen content of the atmosphere. Okay. So now we are done dealing with the spheres of the Earth. So at this moment, we will going to tackle about their interaction from one sphere to another. So like what we have always been doing on social media. So we humans, we are also communicating with each other around the globe through technology. So para sa karon, I am all communicating with all of you guys and discussing about the Earth. So just like the Earth, it has its own way of communicating itself. So, not just kita, but everything on Earth works hand in hand. So everything is being connected with each other, so that it will be an equilibrium and for it to have a balance for sustain the planet itself. So likewise, the four major spheres of the Earth are governed by series of processes that are interconnected, and it plays a vital role that makes the planet Earth work as a whole. So as a recap, we have the following spheres: the geosphere, the hydrosphere, and atmosphere, and the biosphere. So the geosphere includes all the rocks on Earth and all the rocks and minerals on Earth, while the hydrosphere is all the water found on, under and over the surface of the Earth, while the atmosphere is the gases that surrounds the Earth. And lastly, the biosphere is all the life on Earth. So let's try to visualize this picture. So as you can see, there are different animals and species that are interacting with each other. So what if mawala ang sun? Maunsa ka ni sila? If mawala ang sun, so di ba magkagubot? So it can cause a major disruption in imbalance of the ecosystem, right? So okay. So next, let's have a different scale. So we have here a snake plant. So So ang snake, so the sunlight, land, and air, water are the variables to make it alive. So if kwaon na to ang isa diri, like land, mabuhi ba ning snake plants? Of course dili, di ba? It won't, of course it needs those variables in order to survive. So as a plants, so basically everything on earth is connected and acts like a system. So a system that works together to form a whole. So this time we will picture our earth as one whole working body. Since it works like a systematic way, the earth system is all of the matter, energy, and processes within the earth boundary that continuously cycle through the smaller system. So when we talk about the system, it means that a group of related objects or parts that work together to form a whole. Like for example, sa digestive systems, of course, there are organs that work together to process the foods we eat. And also, another example is like working with your group mates in an activity. So you are working with each other to accomplish something, and that reflects our earth. So all the spheres interact as a matter and energy change and cycle through the system. So as a result, this interaction is that they make life on earth possible. So earth spheres interact as a matter moves between them. So in some processes, matters move through several spheres. So now questions is, how does it works? So unsa man ang major source of energy that driving force So what is the source and driving force that make this all happen? So it's like, unsa man ang major source of energy to make this all happen? Of course, the sun. So almost of the Earth's energy comes from the sun. So energy is transferred between the Earth's spheres, and it is not created nor destroyed. So it is the main factor that everything on Earth is dynamic and active. So the movement of energy through the Earth system forms an energy budget. Any addition of energy to one sphere must be balanced by an equal subtraction of energy from another sphere. So as we recall our knowledge, we know that energy exists in many forms, such as heat, light, chemical energy, and electrical energy, and it is the ability to bring about change to do work, which means that without it, all the things on earth will cease from working the usual. So also, it is not only the sun, dili lang ang sun mo yung nag-gives of energy. Of course, we have the geothermal energy nga gikan sa geosphere below the surface of the earth. So again, we have the sun as our external source of energy, and we have the geothermal energy that is generated below the surface of the earth that works as an internal source. So now we will introduce you the major sphere interaction, and we will start off from our sun. So since it is the major source of the energy of our planet, so we have the Earth's energy budget. So simply saying, Earth energy budget is the transfer of energy from the sun to the subcomponents of the Earth. So ang essence sa energy budget is the balance between the incoming shortwave radiation from the sun and outgoing long-wave radiation from the Earth itself. So when an incoming and outgoing energy are in balance, then the Earth's average temperature stays constant. And then when one or more parts of the Earth's budget changes, and then an imbalance occurs, and the Earth's average temperature gets warmer or colder in response. So here we can see that our sun is interacting with all of the things here on Earth, and for which it gives energy to make everything's happened. So next we have the carbon cycle. Next, we have the carbon cycle. So this is a series of processes by which carbon compounds are interconverted in the environment, so involving the incorporation of carbon dioxide into living tissue by photosynthesis and its return to the atmosphere through respiration. So the decay of dead organism and burning of fossil fuel. So there are two major spheres that are involved in carbon cycles. Like when ang carbons or breathe or animals breathe, they are releasing carbon dioxide to the atmosphere, and it is an example of life interacting with the atmosphere. So biosphere and the atmosphere. So the next one is when the plants trap carbon dioxide from the atmosphere through photosynthesis. That is another interaction between the atmosphere and the biosphere. And lastly, so when plants and animals decay, then become part of the soil and therefore part of the geosphere. So next we have the oxygen cycle and respiration. So plants and animals breathe and breathe oxygen and return it to the air and water as a carbon dioxide. So through photosynthesis, plants convert carbon dioxide and water into carbohydrates and release oxygen. So there are two major sphere interaction na involved diri sa oxygen cycle and respiration. So the oxygen involves two major spheres, the atmosphere and the biosphere, for which plants take energy from the sun and atmospheric oxygen in the atmosphere. So the plants then gives off oxygen for the living things and breathe in. So and living things exhale carbon dioxide and then goes back into the atmosphere through the cycle, and the cycle goes on. So next we have the major sphere interaction in nitrogen cycle. So the nitrogen cycle, it is the biogeochemical cycle by which nitrogen is converted into multiple chemicals form as it circulates among atmosphere. So atmosphere and geosphere and a marine ecosystem in the hydrosphere. So the conversion of the nitrogen can be carried out through both biological and physical processes. So next we have the phosphorus cycle. So this cycle moves through every sphere except lang sa atmosphere because it is rarely a gas. So it gets to the soil from the rocks, breaking down and being dissolved in the water. Or when an animal dies, so plants absorb it and it becomes part of them. So animals eat the plant and both die returning into the ground. So lastly, we have the Earth's rotation and tilt. So ngano naman tayo day and night? It is because of the Earth's rotation, and also the Earth's tilt is the season that's ang Earth's tilt, also the Earth's tilt causes seasons that affects the entire ecosystem itself. So those major sphere interaction presented are part of the whole system. Are parts of our whole system of our planet. So now let's try to look into a smaller picture and let's investigate some events that are happening nowadays in order to know how the spheres are connected from each other and what are the effects of such. So let's try to look in these different events and let's distinguish how each event affects the other spheres. So we have the earthquakes, volcanic eruption, and typhoons. So volcanic eruption. This is an actual photo taken during the during the eruption on Mount Pinatubo. So unsa man lang makita ninyo diri sa picture, of course dako kay nga gases nga gikan sa Mount Pinatubo releasing a huge clouds of volcanic ash. So of course since ang volcanic eruption kay originate from the geosphere, it can affect the geosphere and also the biosphere. So it can affect the health of the people and animals that can lead to death, ang geosphere. So, naka-affect siya sa biosphere. And moreover, it can also affect the atmosphere since it's giving off mixtures of gases and dust, making the whole Earth's temperature to lower down. And next, we have the earthquakes. So, earthquake, this is one of which is the Bohol earthquake that happened in the year of 2013. So the event, like volcanic eruption, originate in the geosphere because of the movement of plates below the surface of the earth. So when in fact the Philippines is primarily located in the Pacific Ring of Fire. So meaning it is an earthquake prone country. So ang earthquake kay makadamage ang mga building and which may kill people in the biosphere, and also it can cause fires which releases gases in the atmosphere. So moreover, the destroyed building can be a source of noise pollution, and thus pollution that affects everything in the atmosphere, and can also be a problem to the people living on the area. So ang earthquake pod can also induce and may cause a tsunami, and then it can affect the living things nga naa dito sa mga oceans. And lastly, we have the typhoons. This typhoon, this is known in the Philippines as a super typhoon Yolanda. So it is one of the most powerful tropical cyclone ever recorded. So in making landfall, Typhoon Yolanda devastated portions of Southeast Asia, particularly sa Philippines. So unlike sa earthquakes and the volcanic eruption a typhoon originate in the atmosphere. So ang volcanic eruption and also the earthquakes kay nag-originate sa geosphere, and the typhoons kay nag-originate diri sa atmosphere. So ang typhoons collects energy from the hydrosphere through the ocean. So these winds then collect moisture and rise. So while colder air moves in below, so this creates pressure which causes the winds to move very quickly. So the winds rotate or spin around a center called an eye, eventually devastates everything in its path. So since it can destroy everything in its way, it can be a problem to the people living in the vicinity. So it can affect also sa hydrosphere since it can create storm surges and can also induce floods. So it can also affect the geosphere for the create of landslides. So after seeing everything that we have discussed, we can conclude that everything around us is connected to another. For example, so many birds, which is the biosphere, fly through the air, the atmosphere, while water, hydrosphere, often flows through the soil, which is the geosphere. So in fact, the spheres are so closely are connected, that a change in one sphere often results in a change in one or more of the other spheres. So one small problem can lead into other big problems and will turn out just like a domino effect. So I think that's all for today, and that's all. Thank you.